They built some of the safest planes the world had ever seen. Airlines trusted them. Pilots respected them. Passengers flew on them every day without a second thought. And then, almost overnight, the company behind those aircraft simply vanished. Fokker wasn't some small experiment that failed quietly. This was a Dutch aviation giant that once stood shoulder to shoulder with the biggest names in the sky. Its planes were known for reliability, simplicity, and safety at a time when air travel was still earning public trust. Yet today, outside aviation circles, the name barely rings a bell. Not because the planes were bad, but because something went very wrong behind the scenes. What makes Fokker's story so unsettling is that its downfall didn't start with crashes, scandals, or technical disasters. The aircraft kept flying, the safety record held up, the engineers kept delivering. But while the planes stayed solid, the ground beneath the company began to shift. This is the story of how a national symbol of Dutch engineering conquered the skies, only to be quietly pushed out of the game. A story shaped not by failures in the cockpit, but by boardrooms, political pressure, and decisions that would seal Fokker's fate long before the final bankruptcy papers were signed. And once you see how it happened, you start to wonder how many other safe bets in aviation and beyond disappeared for the very same reasons. Fokker's rise didn't begin with massive factories or government backing. It started with ambition and a belief that a small Dutch company could compete in an industry dominated by far bigger powers. Long before the name became associated with regional jets, Fokker was already building a reputation for doing things differently, focusing on sturdy designs that could handle real-world conditions instead of perfect test scenarios. By the late 20th century, that philosophy was paying off. Fokker aircraft were spreading across Europe and beyond, quietly becoming the backbone of regional airlines. These planes weren't flashy, and they weren't built to impress passengers with luxury. They were built to work. Short runways, bad weather, tight schedules. Fokker planes handled it all, and they did it reliably. Airlines noticed, orders grew. Fokker models like the F-27 and later the F-50 and F-100 earned a reputation for dependability that competitors struggled to match. In an industry where delays cost millions, Fokker's aircraft kept flying when others were grounded. That consistency turned the Dutch manufacturer into a serious global player, not just a niche brand. But success brought a new kind of pressure. As Fokker's presence grew, so did the expectations and the attention from much larger forces shaping the future of aviation. Because in this industry, building good planes is only part of the battle, and Fokker was about to learn that the hard way. But the real challenge wasn't in the skies. It was waiting on the ground. What made Fokker stand out wasn't marketing hype or bold promises. It was trust, quiet, earned trust. Pilots often described Fokker aircraft as predictable and forgiving, the kind of planes that did exactly what you expected, even when conditions weren't ideal. For airlines, that translated into fewer surprises and lower risks. Statistically, Fokker aircraft built a solid safety record over decades of service. Incidents were rare, and when problems did arise, they were often traced back to external factors rather than design flaws. Maintenance crews appreciated how straightforward the systems were. Less complexity meant fewer things to go wrong, and when something did, it was easier to fix. Passengers, for the most part, never noticed, and that was the point. Fokker planes didn't make headlines because nothing dramatic happened on them. They simply got people where they needed to go, day after day. In many ways, they became invisible, the ultimate compliment in aviation. Ironically, that low-profile success may have worked against them. While competitors were selling big visions and futuristic designs, Fokker focused on function. They weren't chasing spectacle. They were chasing reliability. And in a business increasingly driven by perception, being quietly excellent wasn't always enough. Because while Fokker was perfecting safety and efficiency, a very different battle was unfolding behind closed doors, one that had nothing to do with engineering at all. And once that battle began, the rules changed completely. As Fokker strengthened its position in the market, the industry around it was changing fast. Aircraft manufacturing was no longer just about companies competing. Across Europe, attention was shifting toward Airbus. Airbus wasn't just building planes, it was building a continental strategy. Reports from the time suggest that funding, contracts increasingly flowed in one direction. Fokker, despite its strong products, found itself on the outside of that inner circle. This put the Dutch manufacturer in an uncomfortable position. It was too large to be treated as a small specialist, yet too small to influence European aviation policy on its own. Competing against companies with deep state backing meant Fokker had to survive purely on sales and private investment, a risky position in a capital-hungry industry. What's clear is that the playing field was no longer level. Fokker made a move that many believed would secure its future, a decision that would end up defining its final years. What happened next looked like a lifeline, but came with strings attached. Developing new aircraft is brutally expensive, and by the early 1990s, Fokker was feeling that strain. Keeping up with modern standards meant constant investment, long before any profits came back. To many inside the company, the solution seemed obvious. Find a powerful partner who could provide financial stability and global influence. That partner arrived in the form of Daimler-Benz. At the time, the deal was framed as a turning point, a strong industrial giant stepping in to secure Fokker's future. On paper, it looked like a perfect match. In reality, reports later suggested the relationship was far more complicated. According to accounts from former insiders, priorities didn't always align. Fokker focused on long-term aircraft development, while its new owner pushed for quicker financial results. Cost-cutting pressures increased, timelines tightened, and internal tensions reportedly grew. The engineering culture that had defined Fokker for decades was suddenly forced to coexist with corporate expectations it wasn't built for. Meanwhile, new aircraft programs were draining cash faster than anticipated. Sales projections didn't materialize at the speed investors wanted, and patience wore thin. What had been sold as a rescue began to feel like a countdown. And then, just as Fokker was struggling to regain balance, the market itself turned against them at the worst possible moment, because the timing of what came next couldn't have been more brutal. The early 1990s delivered a shock the aviation industry wasn't ready for. A global economic slowdown hit airlines hard, and when airlines feel pressure, the first thing they delay is new aircraft. Orders were postponed, renegotiated, or quietly canceled altogether. For Fokker, this was devastating. The company was already carrying heavy development costs, counting on steady deliveries to stay afloat. Instead, production lines slowed. Revenue shrank. Fixed costs stayed high. Every month, without new orders, tightened the squeeze. Larger manufacturers could absorb the hit, broader product lines, and deeper financial cushions. Fokker didn't. It was caught between rising expenses and a market that suddenly stopped buying. Even airlines that loved flying Fokker aircraft hesitated to commit, uncertain about the company's future. Inside the factories, uncertainty spread. Engineers kept working, planes kept rolling out. But the atmosphere changed. Survival replaced innovation as the main focus. And outside the company, confidence was slipping. A dangerous thing in aviation, where trust is everything. Then, in a move that stunned employees and customers alike, the situation reached a breaking point. And when it broke, it happened faster than anyone expected. In 1996, the end came abruptly. Fokker filed for bankruptcy, and the news rippled through the aviation world. Airlines that still depended on Fokker aircraft were left scrambling. Thousands of employees, many of them highly specialized engineers, found out that decades of work had led to a sudden stop. What made the collapse so surreal was that nothing had failed in the air. Fokker planes were still flying safely every single day. Routes weren't shutting down because of technical problems. The product itself hadn't collapsed. The business behind it had. Almost immediately, questions started circulating. Why was support pulled so quickly? Why was there no last-minute rescue, especially for a company with such a strong safety record? A company that had done nearly everything right in engineering terms was gone, while its aircraft remained in service, quietly proving their worth long after the factories closed. But Fokker's story didn't actually end with bankruptcy. In some ways, that was only the beginning of its strangest chapter. Even after the factories shut down, Fokker refused to disappear. Its aircraft kept flying across the world, often for decades longer than anyone expected. Airlines continued operating them because they trusted them. Maintenance crews kept them airworthy. Passengers kept boarding them, usually without realizing they were flying on planes built by a company that no longer existed. The sky doesn't seem quite as stable as it once did. If you've enjoyed uncovering the rise and fall of Fokker and want to dive even deeper into stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join us at Dear Old Holland. From forgotten Dutch inventions to hidden tales of our past, we bring the stories you won't hear anywhere else. Don't miss out. Subscribe now and explore the history that made the Netherlands what it is today.